The rain fell softly over Gasworks Park that Thursday afternoon, turning Lake Union into a sheet of hammered silver. Isabella Vance sat on the weathered bench overlooking the water, the same bench where her father had taught her to watch the sailboats when she was 7. Back then, the rusted industrial towers had seemed like giants guarding their secret place. Now, at 37, she saw them for what they were, relics of something that had stopped working long ago. Her phone buzzed with the 15th message from Richard. The engagement party invitations needed final approval. She swiped it away. A child's laughter cut through the sound of rain on water. Isabella glanced over to see a little girl in a yellow raincoat crouching by the shore, carefully placing a paper boat into the shallows. A man knelt beside her, his jeans soaked at the knees, guiding her hands with gentle patience. "If you fold the corners like this, Mia, it'll float longer," he said, his voice carrying the kind of warmth Isabella hadn't heard in years. The girl, maybe 6 years old, looked up at him with complete trust. "Will it reach the other side, Daddy?" Probably not. But watching it try is the fun part. Isabella found herself staring, not at the romantic notion of father and daughter, but at something simpler. The man's complete presence in that moment. No phone, no glancing around to see who might be watching. Just hands in cold water, showing a child how to hope. The little girl noticed Isabella watching. "Hi. Do you want to make a boat too?" Before Isabella could politely decline, the man looked over. His eyes were gray, storm-colored, and they took her in with a directness that made her breath catch. Not the appraising look she was used to from men at fundraisers, the mental calculation of her net worth and social position. This was something else. He saw her. "I'm Ethan," he said, standing and extending a damp hand. "Ethan Cole. And this is my chief engineer, Mia." The little girl noticed Isabella watching. "Hi. Do you want to make a boat too?" Isabella shook his hand, surprised by the calluses. "Isabella, just Isabella," she confirmed, surprised to find herself smiling. They talked as the rain softened to mist. Mia demonstrated her boat-folding technique with serious concentration. Ethan mentioned he was a carpenter, that they came here every Thursday after Mia's piano lesson because his daughter had decided this was the best place in Seattle to test her fleet. "What about you?" Ethan asked. Thursday afternoon in the rain, running from something or toward something. The question was too perceptive. Isabella looked down at her hands. At the 3-carat diamond Richard had placed there 2 weeks ago. "I just accepted a marriage proposal. My 18th. Ethan's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained gentle. "Congratulations?" "The others I turned down," Isabella said, not understanding why she was telling this stranger the truth. "This one I said yes to." "What changed?" Isabella watched Mia's paper boat drift toward the center of the lake, wobbling but staying afloat. "I got tired, I think. Tired of being alone. Tired of being the woman who says no to everything." "Do you love him?" The question hung in the mist between them. Isabella opened her mouth to say yes, to recite the practiced lines about compatibility and partnership and shared goals. But sitting on this bench, watching a child play in the rain, the lies wouldn't come. "He's safe," she said finally. "He's wealthy, stable, from a good family. He'll never leave me with nothing." Ethan was quiet for a moment, his eyes on his daughter. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but the words hit like stones, dropping into still water. "Can I ask you something? You want a husband? Or are you just looking for shelter from the things you're afraid of?" Isabella's chest tightened. The rain had stopped entirely now, but she felt as if the sky had opened up directly above her head. In one simple question, this carpenter with gentle hands had seen through 30 years of carefully constructed armor. She stood abruptly, her heart hammering. "I should go." "I'm sorry," Ethan said, rising too. "That was too personal. I have a bad habit of saying what I think. No." Isabella's voice came out rough. "You're right. You're absolutely right." She walked away quickly, her heels clicking on the wet pavement, but all the way back to her car, all through the drive to her downtown office, through the evening meeting with the wedding planner. One question echoed in her mind. What do you really want, a husband or just shelter? Vance Global occupied floors 42 through 48 of the Columbia Tower. Isabella's corner office offered a view of Elliott Bay that Forbes had once described as commanding: the glass walls, the Scandinavian furniture, the abstract art. Everything projected exactly what she'd intended. Control, success, imperviousness. Her assistant, Trevor, knocked on the open door. The Anderson presentation is ready. And Richard called. He'll pick you up at 7 for the engagement dinner. Thank you, Trevor. Alone again, Isabella turned to face the city. From up here, Seattle looked like a circuit board. Orderly and logical. Nothing like the messy, chaotic feeling Ethan's question had left churning in her chest. Her phone lit up with a text from her mother. Margaret Hale called me. The dinner is at Canlis. Wear the navy Armani, not the black. Isabella set the phone face down. Even her mother had already transferred allegiance to the Hales, the family whose approval apparently mattered more than her daughter's feelings. That evening, Richard arrived in his Tesla precisely at 7. He kissed her cheek, never her mouth, in public, and held the car door. At 41, Richard Hale was what Seattle society pages called an excellent catch. Harvard MBA. Partner at his family's investment firm, board member of the Symphony and Children's Hospital. He was also, Isabella had realized over their 6 months of dating, utterly incapable of spontaneity, vulnerability, or admitting he didn't know something. Canlis sat above the lake, all mid-century elegance and hushed conversations. Richard's mother, Margaret, was already seated at their usual table, her silver hair perfect, her smile the temperature of stainless steel. Isabella, darling. Margaret offered her cheek for an air kiss. That dress is lovely. Though the navy would have photographed better. Hello, Margaret. Richard pulled out Isabella's chair. Throughout dinner, he and his mother discussed the engagement party venue, guest list, photographer. Isabella was consulted on nothing. She was the centerpiece they were arranging, not a participant in the planning. We're thinking the Rainier Club, Margaret said, delicately cutting her halibut. 300 guests. The governor will attend. And the Nordstrom family confirmed. That sounds fine, Isabella murmured. Richard reached over and squeezed her hand. You'll be magnificent. Mother has already arranged for Andre to do your hair and makeup. We want everything perfect. We, as if Isabella were a co-creation, a joint project. The waiter brought champagne. Richard raised his glass. To stability. To partnership. To a marriage that makes sense. Not to love. Not to happiness. To sense. Isabella lifted her glass and drank, the champagne tasting like expensive emptiness. Later, in the car back to her building, Richard outlined the next steps. After the wedding in June, Isabella would step back from the day-to-day operations of Vance Global. Not retire, he assured her. Just transition to a more appropriate role. Perhaps philanthropy. Mother has wonderful connections with the arts community. I built that company from nothing, Isabella said quietly, and you've proven yourself. Now you can enjoy the fruits of success. Richard patted her knee. Trust me, darling. I know what's best. He walked her to her penthouse door but didn't ask to come in. He never did. Their relationship was scheduled, appropriate, clean. The wedding night would be soon enough for anything physical. Margaret had made that clear when she'd commented approvingly on their old-fashioned restraint. Alone in her apartment, Isabella stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows looking over the city. The penthouse was beautiful designer everything. Not a single personal photograph or memento to mar the aesthetic. It looked like a hotel suite. It felt like a vault. She thought of Ethan Cole kneeling in the rain, his daughter's small hand in his, the way he'd looked at Isabella like she was a person, not a portfolio. You want a husband or just shelter? Isabella pressed her forehead against the cold glass. The truth was, She didn't know anymore. She'd spent so long building walls, she'd forgotten what it felt like to want something really want it, rather than just need to be protected from what she feared. Isabella told herself she wasn't looking for Ethan when she drove to Volunteer Park the following Saturday. She just needed air. Space away from the wedding plans that had consumed her apartment like kudzu. But when she saw the yellow raincoat playing near the conservatory, her heart kicked unexpectedly. Mia spotted her first. "It's the boat lady. Daddy, look." Ethan turned, a smile spreading across his face that made him look younger than she'd thought. Maybe 35. "Isabella. I was hoping we'd run into you again. Were you?" The question came out more vulnerable than she'd intended. "Mia's been asking about you all week. Wanted to know if you made your boat yet." "I haven't had time." Mia tugged Isabella's hand. "We can make one now. Daddy always has paper in his truck." Isabella found herself sitting on the grass, her first time sitting on grass in years, while Mia demonstrated the folding technique with patient seriousness. Ethan stretched out nearby, propped on one elbow, watching them both with quiet amusement. "How's the wedding planning?" he asked. "Efficient. Margaret has everything organized." "Margaret?" "My future mother-in-law." Isabella creased a corner too sharply, and the paper tore. "Damn. Here." Ethan handed her a fresh sheet. His fingers brushed hers, and Isabella felt the touch all the way up her arm. "Start again." Gentler this time. They sat in silence while Isabella refolded. Mia wandered off to examine a flower bed, and Ethan's attention settled fully on Isabella. "Can I ask what happened?" he said quietly. "With the fear you mentioned. About being left with nothing." Isabella's hands stilled on the paper. She never talked about her father. Not to Richard. Not to anyone. But something about this man's steady presence made the words rise up. "My father was a developer. Small projects, but successful. When I was 11, he leveraged everything for one big deal, a mixed-use complex in Tacoma. She smoothed the paper boat's edges. His partner embezzled the construction funds. The bank foreclosed. We lost our house, our cars, everything. My father couldn't handle it. He drove to that house we'd lost and shot himself in what used to be our living room." Ethan's sharp intake of breath was the only sound. "Then why does it feel like I do?" "So you built an empire instead." "So I built a cage. A very expensive, very beautiful cage." Isabella looked up at him. "Richard's family is old money. Real estate, investments, political connections. If I marry him, I'll never have to be afraid again. But you'll have to be someone else. So you built an empire instead." Ethan's sharp intake of breath was the only sound. "But you are now. Now I'm trying. Learning to be present instead of perfect. Mia teaches me that every day." He picked a blade of grass, turning it between calloused fingers. "After Sarah died, people kept telling me to move on. To find someone new. Like my wife was a position that needed filling. But Mia helped me understand something. A home isn't four walls. It's where your heart doesn't have to run anymore." Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. "That's beautiful. It's true." Ethan met her gaze. "And I don't think you've found that yet. Even with your very safe fiancé." "Daddy!" Mia came running back, clutching something in her fist. "Look what I found for the boat lady." She opened her hand to reveal a tiny pressed flower, purple and delicate. "It's perfect," Isabella whispered, taking it carefully. "You really do look sad like Daddy used to," Mia said with a child's brutal honesty. "But boats make everything better." Isabella laughed through the tears that had finally spilled over. "Do they?" "Almost everything," Ethan corrected gently. He stood and offered Isabella his hand. "Come on. Let's go test this fleet." They spent the afternoon at the pond, launching paper boats and watching them drift. Mia narrated adventures for each vessel, pirates and mermaids and storms that never quite sank them. Isabella's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Trevor about the engagement party timeline. She ignored everyone. When the sun began to set, painting the park gold and amber, Ethan walked Isabella to her car. "Thank you," she said. "For today. For listening. Can I tell you something?" Ethan leaned against her Mercedes, looking absurdly right there, despite the contrast between his worn jeans and her luxury vehicle. "I think you're stronger than you know. You survived your father's death. You built a company. You don't need Richard Hale to protect you." When the sun began to set, painting the park gold and amber, Ethan walked Isabella to her car. They spent the afternoon at the pond, launching paper boats and watching them drift. Mia narrated adventures for each vessel, pirates and mermaids and storms that never quite sank them. Isabella's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Trevor about the engagement party timeline. She ignored everyone. "Then why does it feel like I do?" Isabella drove home with those words echoing in her mind. The pressed flower Mia had given her tucked carefully in her wallet. There was the world of Vance Global and wedding planning, where every detail was controlled and predictable. Margaret had taken over completely, selecting everything from the cake flavor to the honeymoon destination, 2 weeks in the Maldives at a resort where, according to Margaret, all the right people vacationed. Richard approved everything his mother suggested with the bland confidence of someone who'd never questioned a decision in his life. Then there was the world of Gasworks Park and Volunteer Park, where Isabella kept running into Ethan and Mia. She told herself it was coincidence, but by the fourth chance meeting, Ethan's knowing smile suggested he understood she was choosing to be there. They never planned these meetings. Isabella would simply drive to one of the parks on a Saturday or a Thursday evening, and somehow Ethan would be there, sanding a piece of driftwood for one of his projects or helping Mia practice her cartwheels. They talked about everything and nothing. Ethan told her about his carpentry business, how he specialized in custom furniture for clients who wanted something meaningful rather than just expensive. Isabella found herself describing the early days of Vance Global, back when she'd worked 100-hour weeks and lived on coffee and determination. "You loved it then," Ethan observed one evening as they sat on the seawall at Golden Gardens, watching Mia collect shells. "I loved proving everyone wrong. Everyone who said a 23-year-old woman with no connections couldn't build a financial firm. And now I've proven it. And I'm tired." Mia brought over a sand dollar, perfectly intact. "For your collection," she said, placing it in Isabella's palm. "I don't have a collection, sweetie. You should start one. Everyone needs a collection of something." Mia returned to her search with the absolute certainty of a 6-year-old. Meanwhile, Richard's presence in Isabella's life became increasingly intrusive. He'd hired a stylist named Petra, who arrived at Isabella's office twice a week, with outfits for her to approve, all of them variations on the same theme of elegant, appropriate wife. "The burgundy is too bold," Petra said, holding up a dress Isabella had actually liked. "Mrs. Hale suggested we stick to navies and grays. Classic. Timeless. I'm 37, not 70, Isabella said. "You should start one. Everyone needs a collection of something." Mia returned to her search with the absolute certainty of a 6-year-old. "Your workshop. If that's all right, I need." She couldn't finish. Couldn't articulate what she needed. The breaking point came on a Wednesday evening. Richard had surprised her with dinner reservations at the Walrus and the Carpenter. Isabella had been looking forward to it. She loved that place, the casual atmosphere, the exceptional oysters. But when they arrived, Richard immediately began criticizing. "It's too noisy. And I don't understand the appeal of eating at a counter. We should have gone to Altura. I like it here. Mother would never approve of the informality. What if someone takes a photograph?" But when they arrived, Richard immediately began criticizing. "It's too noisy. And I don't understand the appeal of eating at a counter. We should have gone to Altura." He looked genuinely puzzled. "They're the same thing, aren't they? Mother has impeccable taste. She's only trying to help you adjust to your new role." "My new role is what? A mannequin you can dress up and pose at parties? Don't be dramatic, Isabella. You knew what you were getting into when you accepted my proposal." The terrible thing was, he was right. She had known. She'd chosen this precisely because it was predictable, controlled, safe. She'd walked into this cage with her eyes open. Isabella, is everything okay? The terrible thing was, he was right. She had known. She'd chosen this precisely because it was predictable, controlled, safe. She'd walked into this cage with her eyes open. He looked genuinely puzzled. They're the same thing, aren't they? Mother has impeccable taste. She's only trying to help you adjust to your new role. Of course, the usual place, your workshop. If that's all right, I need. She couldn't finish. Couldn't articulate what she needed. I'll text you the address. Come whenever you're ready. Isabella sat by the water until midnight, watching the city lights reflect on the dark surface, trying to understand how she'd become so lost. The family image. As if Isabella were being absorbed into the Hale brand, her own identity dissolving into whatever they needed her to be. I'll text you the address. Come whenever you're ready. Isabella opened it, expecting the standard financial protections. What she found made her blood run cold. The document wasn't just about money. It was a blueprint for dismantling her entire life. Upon marriage, Isabella would resign from her position as CEO of Vance Global and assume an advisory role with no operational authority. The company would be restructured under a board that included 3 Hale family members. All major financial decisions, including how Isabella spent her own money, would require Richard's approval. If the marriage ended for any reason, Isabella would forfeit her shares in Vance Global and receive a fixed settlement of $2 million, roughly 3% of what she'd built. There was more. She would be required to close her downtown penthouse and move to the Hale estate in Broadmoor. Her social calendar would be managed by Margaret to ensure appropriate representation of the family brand. Even her charitable giving would need pre-approval. Isabella's hands shook as she read. This wasn't a marriage contract. It was a terms of surrender. Her intercom buzzed. Mrs. Hale is here to see you. Isabella barely had time to close the document before Margaret swept in, elegant in Chanel, her smile perfectly calibrated. Isabella, darling, I wanted to discuss the prenup in person, in case you had questions. I have many questions. Margaret settled into the chair across from Isabella's desk. I know it seems extensive, but the Hale family has certain standards. We've worked very hard to build our reputation, and we must protect it. By taking away everything I've built, by ensuring you're free to focus on your true priorities, supporting Richard, representing the family properly, and eventually giving us grandchildren. Margaret's voice was honey over steel. You'll find it quite liberating, actually, not having the stress of running a company. I built Vance Global from nothing, and you've proven yourself admirably. But let's be honest, Isabella. Margaret leaned forward. You came from nothing. A father who killed himself. A mother who works as a dental hygienist. You've done remarkably well, but you lack the breeding, the connections, the social graces that come from generations of privilege. You need us to legitimize what you've achieved. The words hit like acid. And what does Richard get from this arrangement? A beautiful, accomplished wife who understands her place. A partner who won't compete with him or embarrass the family. Margaret stood, smoothing her skirt. Sign the agreement, dear. You're getting far more than you're giving up. Security. Status. Protection from ever ending up. Like your poor father. After Margaret left, Isabella sat frozen at her desk. Trevor knocked softly. Are you all right? No. Isabella looked at the prenup, at the spaces marked for her signature. I'm very far from all right. That evening, she stood on her balcony 42 floors above Seattle and let herself cry deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place she'd kept locked since she was 12 years old. Margaret was right about one thing. Isabella was terrified of ending up like her father. But she'd been so focused on avoiding financial ruin that she'd walked straight into another kind of destruction. She was about to trade her freedom, her company, her identity, everything that mattered for the illusion of safety. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. Workshop is open tomorrow if you still want to come by. No pressure. Isabella wiped her eyes and typed back. I'll be there at 10. She was about to trade her freedom, her company, her identity, everything that mattered for the illusion of safety. By sunrise, Isabella knew what she had to do. But knowing and having the courage to do it were two different things. Ethan's workshop occupied a converted warehouse in Ballard, tucked between a craft brewery and a metalworking studio. Isabella almost drove past it twice before spotting the small sign, Cole Woodworks. Inside, the space smelled like cedar and linseed oil. Sunlight streamed through industrial windows, illuminating workbenches covered with tools, half-finished furniture pieces, and Mia's drawings taped to every available surface. Ethan looked up from a table he was sanding, his hands and forearms dusted with wood shavings. He wore a faded flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and Isabella felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. By sunrise, Isabella knew what she had to do. But knowing and having the courage to do it were two different things. Hey. He set down the sander and wiped his hands on his jeans. You found it. Mia's at school. I hope that's okay. I thought we could talk without. It's perfect. Isabella moved deeper into the workshop, running her fingers along a beautifully carved dresser. You made this? For a client in Madison Park. Cherry wood, hand-carved pulls. They wanted something that would last generations. He came to stand beside her. That's what I love about woodworking. You can build something that outlives you. Something real. Ethan looked up from a table he was sanding, his hands and forearms dusted with wood shavings. He wore a faded flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and Isabella felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. And it's not a marriage contract. It's an acquisition agreement. They want me to give up my company, my independence, my money, my entire life. In exchange, they'll allow me to be Mrs. Richard Hale and follow Margaret's instructions on how to dress, who to see, what charities to support. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's not marriage. No, it's shelter. Exactly what you said I was looking for. Isabella sank onto a nearby stool, suddenly exhausted. The worst part is, I almost signed it. I sat there last night with a pen in my hand, ready to trade everything I've built for the promise that I'd never be poor again, never be abandoned again. But you didn't sign it. Not yet. Ethan pulled up another stool, sitting close enough that their knees almost touched. What do you want, Isabella? Not what you're afraid of. Not what's safe. What do you actually want? The question broke something open inside her. I want to feel like myself again. I want to run my company without someone telling me it's not appropriate. I want to wake up next to someone who knows me. Not the portfolio, not the brand. But me. I want. She looked at him. This carpenter with kind eyes and steady hands. I want what you have with Mia. That ease, that joy, that sense of being home. You can have that, can I? I'm 37 years old, Ethan. I've built my entire life around being invulnerable. I don't know how to let someone in. I don't even know if I'm capable of loving someone without being terrified they'll destroy me. Hey. Ethan reached out and took her hand, his thumb tracing the line of her knuckles. You're here, aren't you? You drove across the city to a carpenter's workshop to tell me the truth about your life. That's brave. That's letting someone in. I'm so tired of being strong all the time. Then don't be. Not here. His voice was gentle. You want to know what I see when I look at you? Not a CEO. Not someone who needs protecting. I see a woman who survived something that would have broken most people. Who built something extraordinary out of her pain. Who's funny and sharp and scared and trying so hard to find her way back to herself. Ethan, I like you, Isabella. Not your balance sheet. Not your connections. You. The woman who sits in the rain making paper boats with my daughter. Who cries when she talks about her father. Who looks at my furniture like it's art. He shifted closer. I know the timing is terrible. I know you're engaged, but I need you to know. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not tolerated for what you can provide. Isabella felt tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. You've known since that first day in the park. You're just scared. Terrified. Good. That means it matters. Ethan cupped her face in both hands, his palms rough and warm. You don't owe Richard or his mother anything. You don't have to earn the right to be yourself. Isabella kissed him, then a desperate, trembling press of lips that tasted like salt and sawdust and possibility. Ethan made a soft sound of surprise, and then kissed her back. Gentle and sure. One hand sliding into her hair. When they finally pulled apart, Isabella was shaking. I can't marry him. No, Ethan agreed. You can't. The engagement party is in 3 days. 300 people. The governor. Margaret has orchestrated everything. So, uncreate it. Isabella laughed shakily. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. Ethan kissed her forehead. You tell the truth. You walk away. You choose yourself. And then what? Then you build a life that's actually yours. He smiled. Maybe with some paper boats thrown in. Isabella stayed in the workshop for hours. They didn't kiss again, but they talked about her fears, about his grief over losing his wife, about what it meant to start over. Ethan showed her the jewelry box he was making for Mia, explaining how he'd chosen figured maple for its beauty and hidden strength. That's you, he said, running his hand over the wood grain, beautiful and stronger than you think. When Isabella finally left, the sun was setting over Ballard. She drove to her penthouse, packed a bag, and checked into a hotel downtown. She couldn't sleep in the apartment Richard's mother had already mentally redecorated. Tomorrow, she would tell Richard the engagement was off. And in 3 days, she would face the entire Seattle social elite and choose freedom over shelter. The thought terrified her. But for the first time in 25 years, Isabella Vance wasn't running from fear. She was running towards something real. The Hale estate in Broadmoor looked like something from a different era. Sprawling gardens, a circular drive where valets parked Teslas and Mercedes, string lights transforming the grounds into a fairy tale. 300 guests in cocktail attire, champagne flowing, a string quartet playing Vivaldi. Isabella stood in the upstairs bedroom where Margaret had installed her 3 hours ago, staring at her reflection. The stylist had done exceptional work. Her hair swept into an elegant chignon, makeup flawless, the dove-gray Valentino gown fitting perfectly. She looked like exactly what Margaret wanted, a beautiful, appropriate bride. She looked nothing like herself. Her phone buzzed. Ethan, you don't have to do this. Isabella had tried to call off the engagement party. Richard had refused to listen. Last-minute doubts are normal, he'd said patronizingly. Once you see how beautiful everything is, you'll feel better. So Isabella had made a different plan. She texted Ethan back, Yes, I do, but not the way they think. Downstairs, the party was in full swing. Isabella descended the curved staircase to a smattering of applause. Richard waited at the bottom in a custom tuxedo, his smile confident. He took her hand and led her through the crowd, senators, tech executives, old Seattle money, everyone who mattered, according to Margaret. Isabella recognized many faces from her business world, people who'd worked with Vance Global. She saw them doing the math, realizing that after the marriage, they'd need to go through Richard to reach her. She was already being erased. The champagne toast was scheduled for 8 o'clock. At 7:45, Margaret swept Isabella into the library for final preparations. You look perfect, Margaret said, adjusting Isabella's necklace, a Hale family heirloom that felt like a collar. Richard is very pleased. The photographer from Town and Country is here. And I've arranged for the engagement announcement to run in the Times tomorrow. Margaret, I need to tell you something. Not now, dear. We're about to begin. Now. Isabella removed the necklace and set it on the desk. I'm not marrying Richard. Margaret's expression went from indulgent to icy in a heartbeat. Don't be absurd. There are 300 people here. I know. And I'm going to tell them the truth. You'll do no such thing. Do you have any idea what this will do to the family's reputation, to Richard's position? I don't care. Isabella felt remarkably calm. I'm not signing the prenup. I'm not giving up my company. I'm not spending my life being managed by you. Margaret's voice dropped to a hiss. You ungrateful little. You came from nothing. Your father was a suicide. Your mother cleans teeth. We were willing to overlook all of that, to give you legitimacy. And this is how you repay us? By refusing to disappear? Yes. Isabella moved toward the door. I'm sorry Richard will be embarrassed. I'm sorry this disrupts your plans. But I'm not sorry I'm choosing myself. She left Margaret sputtering and found Richard in the garden, laughing with a group of his Harvard friends. When he saw her face, his smile faded. Isabella? Is something wrong? Can we talk privately? He excused himself and they walked to a quiet corner near the roses. What is it? Mother said you were upset. I can't marry you, Richard. He blinked. What? I don't love you. You don't love me. We're not building a life together. You're acquiring a accessory, and I'm buying security. It's not fair to either of us. Richard's face hardened. This is about that carpenter, isn't it? Mother told me you'd been seen with some tradesman and his child. This is about me realizing I'd rather be alone than be someone I'm not. You're being hysterical. We'll talk about this tomorrow. After you've calmed down. No. Isabella pulled off the engagement ring. We won't. I'm so sorry, Richard. But I'm done. You're being hysterical. We'll talk about this tomorrow. After you've calmed down. He excused himself and they walked to a quiet corner near the roses. What is it? Mother said you were upset. She pressed the ring into his palm and walked back toward the house. Richard followed, his voice rising. You can't do this. Not here. Not now. She gently removed his hand and stepped up to the small stage where the microphone stood waiting. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice came out steady. You'll do no such thing. Do you have any idea what this will do to the family's reputation, to Richard's position? No. Isabella pulled off the engagement ring. We won't. I'm so sorry, Richard. But I'm done. The engagement party is in 3 days. 300 people. The governor. Margaret has orchestrated everything. This is ridiculous, Margaret called out. Richard. Stop her. But Richard stood frozen, and Isabella kept speaking. No. Isabella pulled off the engagement ring. We won't. I'm so sorry, Richard. But I'm done. She set the necklace on a nearby table and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted silently. At the door, she turned back one last time. For anyone who's ever felt like they had to be someone they're not to be loved, you don't. You deserve to be chosen for exactly who you are. But Richard stood frozen, and Isabella kept speaking. Behind her, the silence erupted into chaos. But she didn't look back. The story hit the Seattle Times by morning. Heiress abandons Hale wedding in dramatic public exit. By noon, it had spread to national outlets. By evening, Isabella's phone had 400 missed calls. I said yes because I was afraid, Isabella continued. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of ending up like my father, who lost everything and couldn't survive it. I thought if I married someone from the right family, with the right connections, I'd finally be safe. She found Richard in the crowd. But safety isn't love, and I can't marry someone I don't love, no matter how appropriate the match seems. The consequences came swiftly. Margaret Hale, humiliated and furious, launched a quiet but devastating campaign. She called in favors with board members at companies that did business with Vance Global. She whispered to society reporters about Isabella's instability and poor judgment. She suggested to influential friends that Isabella might not be trustworthy, might be having some kind of breakdown. Within a week, 3 major clients pulled their accounts. 2 board members resigned. The company's stock price dropped 8%. Isabella's mother called, crying, "How could you do this? The Hales are talking to lawyers. They're saying you caused reputational damage. Margaret has turned the entire bridge club against us." "I'm sorry, Mom." "Sorry? You had everything. You threw it away for what, some carpenter?" Her mother's voice broke. "You're just like your father. Self-destructive. Unable to see good fortune when it's right in front of you." The comparison to her father hit like a physical blow. Isabella hung up and cried for an hour, but there were other calls too. Her assistant Trevor. "Whatever you need, I'm here." Her college roommate Sarah. "About damn time you chose yourself." And Ethan, texting every morning. "How are you doing?" No pressure to respond. After 2 weeks of hiding, Isabella made a decision. She sold the downtown penthouse, took a loss, didn't care, and used the money to buy a small craftsman house in Ballard, 3 blocks from the water. It needed work, but it had a garden and big windows and a porch where she could drink coffee and watch the neighborhood wake up. Mia came with Ethan to help paint the living room. She'd chosen yellow because it's a happy color, and she was probably right. Isabella had never had a happy-colored room before. "You're getting paint in your hair," Ethan said, gently removing a drop from behind her ear. "I've never painted a room before. Is that pathetic?" "It's honest." He kissed her forehead, casual and sweet, and went back to rolling the wall. This was what she'd been missing, Isabella realized. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but someone who saw her with paint in her hair and thought she was beautiful anyway. The house became her project. She hired Ethan to build custom bookshelves, and she spent weekends sanding and staining them beside him while Mia read aloud from her favorite books. She planted tomatoes and herbs in the garden. She bought furniture from estate sales and refinished it herself, learning from YouTube videos and Ethan's patient instruction. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It was better. She set the necklace on a nearby table and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted silently. At the door, she turned back one last time. The company might fail, she told Ethan one night as they sat on her new porch, drinking wine and watching the sunset. Would that be the end of the world? A year ago, I would have said yes. Now, Isabella leaned her head on his shoulder. Now I think I'd survive it. Maybe I'd even do something different, something I actually want to do instead of something I have to do to feel safe. Like what? I don't know yet, but I'm starting to think it's okay not to know. 3 months after the engagement party, Isabella ran into Margaret Hale at a charity function. Margaret's expression was arctic. "I hope you're satisfied with yourself," Margaret said. "You've made yourself unmarriageable in this city. Good." Isabella replied calmly. "I don't want to be marketable. I want to be myself. You'll end up alone." Isabella thought of Ethan teaching her to use a hand plane, his patience infinite. Of Mia falling asleep on her couch during movie nights. Of the community, she was building real friendships, not networking connections. "No," she said. "I don't think I will." Isabella found the documents by accident. She was cleaning out her father's old file box, the one item she'd kept from their foreclosed house, looking for his handwritten recipe for Christmas cookies. Instead, she found a folder marked Harbor Point Development Legal. Inside were letters between her father and his bank, Coastal First Financial. Isabella had always believed her father's partner had embezzled the construction funds. But these letters told a different story. The bank had approved the construction loan, then revoked it 3 weeks later without cause, citing a policy change. They demanded immediate repayment of funds already dispersed. When her father couldn't comply, they'd foreclosed on everything: the development property, his business assets, the family home, and sold it all at auction. To Hale Properties. Isabella's hands shook as she read. The bank's CEO at the time, Jonathan Hale, Richard's uncle. It wasn't embezzlement. It was a coordinated scheme to steal her father's project. The Hales had used their influence to have the loan revoked, then swooped in to buy everything at pennies on the dollar. They'd built the Harbor Point complex her father had designed and made millions. Her father hadn't failed. He'd been destroyed. Isabella sat on her bedroom floor surrounded by papers, feeling like her entire understanding of her life was reshaping itself. All these years, she'd believed her father was weak, unable to handle business failure. But he hadn't failed at business. He'd been a victim of criminal fraud, and she'd nearly married into the family that had killed him. Isabella did both. He arrived 20 minutes later, took one look at her face, and pulled her into his arms. Isabella told him everything, her voice hollow with shock. "What are you going to do?" he asked when she finished. "I don't know. The statute of limitations has probably passed. But this is fraud. Conspiracy. It destroyed my father. Do you want revenge?" Isabella thought about that. A year ago, the answer would have been an immediate yes. But now, I want the truth to come out. I want people to know my father wasn't weak or incompetent. He was robbed. Those are different things. I know. Mia appeared in the doorway, holding her stuffed rabbit. Why is Isabella crying? She found out something sad about her dad. Ethan explained gently. Mia climbed into Isabella's lap. My mommy died, and it made me really sad. Daddy says it's okay to be sad about people we miss. Isabella held the small, warm body and felt something shift inside her. Your daddy is very wise. Are you going to be okay? Yes, sweetheart, I am. After Mia fell asleep on the couch, Ethan and Isabella talked late into the night. He didn't tell her what to do. He just listened, asked questions, helped her think through what she actually wanted. I could go to the press, Isabella said. Destroy the Hale family reputation the way they destroyed my father. Would that make you feel better? Maybe, for a while. She looked at the documents spread across her coffee table. But then, I'd be choosing revenge over healing. I'd be letting them define my life again, just in a different way. I could go to the press, Isabella said. Destroy the Hale family reputation the way they destroyed my father. Isabella was quiet for a long time. The truth. Not for revenge. Just for the record. Let people know what happened. Let my father's name be cleared. And then, let it go. She spent the next week consulting with lawyers. The statute of limitations had indeed passed for criminal charges, but she could file a civil case. She could also report the evidence to the Washington State Attorney General's office for investigation. Isabella held the small, warm body and felt something shift inside her. Your daddy is very wise. Isabella was quiet for a long time. The truth. Not for revenge. Just for the record. Let people know what happened. Let my father's name be cleared. And then, let it go. Maybe, for a while. She looked at the documents spread across her coffee table. But then, I'd be choosing revenge over healing. I'd be letting them define my life again, just in a different way. So what's the alternative? Isabella did both. Isabella did both. Isabella did both. So what's the alternative? Is that weird? She asked Ethan as they walked along the Ballard locks, watching Salmon navigate the fish ladder. No, revenge is exhausting. Healing is what you actually need. How do I do that? So what's the alternative? She hung up and blocked the number. They are, but they're not doing it alone, they're all swimming together. No, revenge is exhausting. Healing is what you actually need. So what's the alternative? She hung up and blocked the number. She hung up and blocked the number. I love you too, she whispered. I didn't think I could. But I do. No, revenge is exhausting. Healing is what you actually need. Margaret called Isabella directly. You vindictive, spiteful woman. You're doing this because Richard rejected you. Margaret called Isabella directly. You vindictive, spiteful woman. You're doing this because Richard rejected you. Vance Global had stabilized. She'd lost clients but gained new ones, smaller firms who appreciated her hands-on approach and willingness to rebuild. The company was smaller now, but healthier. Isabella had hired a COO to handle operations while she focused on strategy and client relationships. She worked 50 hours a week instead of 80, and actually enjoyed it. Isabella leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his shoulder. The fish are pretty determined, but more than any of that, Isabella had built a life that felt like hers. She and Ethan had been together for 8 months, taking it slowly, building something solid. She'd become a fixture in Mia's life, attending piano recitals, helping with homework, learning to braid hair in increasingly elaborate styles. The three of them had dinner together most nights, either at Isabella's craftsman house or Ethan's smaller place near the workshop. "Penny for your thoughts," Ethan said, appearing on the path with 2 coffees. "That's a terrible rate." "My thoughts are worth at least $1 now." He laughed and sat beside her, handing over a cup. "Okay, $1. What are you thinking about? How different everything is from a year ago. How terrified I was sitting here the first time. And now? Now I'm still scared sometimes. But it's a different kind of fear, not the paralyzing kind." Ethan was quiet for a moment, watching the rain make patterns on the water. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small wooden box, clearly handmade. Isabella's breath caught. "Ethan, before you panic, just listen." He opened the box to reveal a ring carved from dark wood walnut. "Maybe, with a delicate grain and a smooth, perfect finish. I made this myself. It's not conventional, and it's definitely not expensive. But it's real. And it's made to last. It's beautiful. Isabella Vance, I'm not offering you shelter. I'm not promising to protect you from everything scary or to fix all your problems. I can't make you rich. You already did that yourself. I can't give you status or connections or any of the things Richard could have given you." He took her hand. "What I can offer is this. I'll walk beside you. I'll hold your hand when you're scared and celebrate with you when you win. I'll build furniture for our house and teach our kids to fold paper boats. I'll love you when you're strong and when you're falling apart. I'll be your partner, not your shelter." Tears streamed down Isabella's face. "That's all I've ever wanted." Tears streamed down Isabella's face. "That's all I've ever wanted." Isabella laughed through her tears. "Yes. God. Yes." Ethan slid the wooden ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, warm against her skin. She kissed him there on the bench, in the rain, exactly where everything had started. When they finally pulled apart, Mia emerged from behind a nearby tree, where she'd apparently been hiding, clutching a bouquet of slightly squashed flowers. "You said yes," she shouted, running over and throwing her arms around Isabella. "Does this mean you're going to be my mom for real?" Isabella knelt down to Mia's level. "If you want me to be." "I do. I already made you a card. And I drew a picture of our family. Want to see?" She pulled a folded paper from her jacket, a child's drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, standing in front of a yellow house. The figures were labeled Daddy, Mia, and Mom. Isabella's heart cracked open in the best possible way. "This is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever made me." They walked back to Ethan's truck together, Mia chattering about wedding plans. She had very strong opinions about flower girls. Isabella looked down at the wooden ring on her finger. It caught no light, sparkled not at all. But it was perfect. That evening, the 3 of them went to Gasworks Park one more time. Mia had insisted on bringing paper and markers to make boats. "This one is for good luck," she explained, decorating hers with hearts and stars. "What are you wishing for?" Isabella asked. "That we're happy, forever and ever." Ethan and Isabella exchanged a glance over Mia's head. "I think we can manage that," Ethan said. They launched the boats as the sun began to set, painting the lake in shades of gold and rose. Mia's boat drifted toward the center, wobbling but staying afloat. "Look," Mia pointed. "It's going all the way across." Isabella stood between Ethan and Mia, their hands linked, watching a paper boat carry a child's wishes across the water. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, terrified, armored, choosing safety over authenticity. That woman had thought happiness meant protection from pain. She'd believed love was a transaction, security in exchange for freedom. But standing here with her new family, Isabella understood the truth. A home wasn't four walls. It wasn't a bank account, or a prenuptial agreement, or a powerful last name. A home was where your heart didn't have to run anymore, where you were known completely and loved anyway, where you could be scared and strong, successful and struggling, perfectly imperfect, and that was enough. "Hey," Ethan said softly, squeezing her hand. "You okay?" Isabella looked at him, at this man who'd asked her one simple question that had changed everything. "Do you want a husband, or just shelter?" She'd been looking for shelter. Instead, she'd found home. "I'm better than okay," she said, and meant it with her whole heart. "I'm finally free." They stood together as the light faded, three people who'd all lost something and found each other, watching paper boats drift across the water toward whatever came next. And for the first time in 25 years, Isabella Vance wasn't afraid of the journey. She was ready for it.